it's a pleasure to be here today, and we would like to thank ZF for partnering us with this. As many of you will have noticed going around the show, electrification and the future of the construction machinery industry has been a key topic, and it's one that we'd like to develop a little bit further at the moment with our panel of experts. We could introduce them. At the very end is Mr. Mike Osenga, who is based in America and is the publisher of Diesel Progress. Then we have Chris Slight, who is Managing Director of Off-Highway Research, who is based in the UK. Then we have Mr. Peter Tepfenhart, who is Product Manager Off-Highway at ZF, and then Mr. Gerhard Stempfer, Head of E-Mobility for Industrial Applications. So the plan is that I have some questions which I will put to our expert panel, and then we would like to throw an invitation open to the audience, and you can have your chance to ask some questions. That is the planned format. So first, we're going to discuss the drivers and technologies of future urban construction sites. We're going to discuss what role electrification will play, what is the future for diesel technology, and what the legal requirements will be, and what will be the focus on carbon dioxide emissions and the implications for noise reduction. So the first question I'm going to ask the gentleman is that it's estimated that by 2050, two-thirds of the world's population will live in a metropolis. So obviously that will have considerable implications for construction machinery. Gentlemen, if I can start with you, Mike. Do you have a view on this? Do you think that electrification is the answer? And what is the market development prospect for electrification products?
Thank you, Ian. Yes, and I should preface it with, even though the name says Diesel Progress, for the last 3 years we've been covering electrification, all the alternative technologies to diesel and internal combustion engines. So if it moves machinery, that's the kind of thing we cover. Certainly the world is urbanizing quickly. I think one thing that needs to be more clearly understood is the growth is coming in the existing areas. There is not a new hotbed of urbanization. There's not, other than maybe China, cities springing up all over the place. It tends to be growing. I think I saw the slide that North America is 80% urbanization. Europe is 75-80% urbanized. This will just continue to get higher and higher, but it's not like there's new markets opening up that there will be new urban areas created. It's more urban growth in existing urban areas. No doubt, as they get larger, more crowded, cluttered, there's going to be requirements from the population, from the government, from everybody to reduce emissions, reduce noise, and there's only really one channel towards that, and that's electrification. I do think, anybody that's painting the internal combustion engine is dead. Just looking around the audience, I think we'll all be retired, long retired, before the last internal combustion engine is gone. It's still going to be a part of the puzzle, which we'll talk about today, I think, at some point. So certainly all you have to do is walk around Bauma this week, and electrification is everywhere, and an increasingly urban world is going to require more and more electrification. It's a given. It's not that, and the pressure on global warming, climate control, there's no other route forward. And I think we're seeing it here, maybe for the first time at Bauma in 2019.
Okay, if I could come to you, thank you for that, Mike. If I could come to you next, Peter, do you have a view on this subject?
Yeah, so I'm the same opinion like Mike. So we are thinking that electrification, especially in the urban area, will play a big role in the future. And even more, we are thinking that electrification will start in the urban areas. This will be a big challenge for all, for supplier, vehicle manufacturers, because we will get an additional technology. So diesel technology will not die, this is also my opinion. So we will have two technologies side by side, and the challenge is to offer therefore the right solution.
Okay, Chris, would you like to take up the conversation?
It's going to be possibly a boring panel because I think we're agreeing with each other. But I certainly agree with the move to urbanisation and what you see when societies go to that, how it affects the type of equipment that's bought. Everything moves towards compact equipment. Compact excavators particularly, but compact wheel loaders if you need mobility. That's just the way it's worked. And in the past they've been diesel powered, but I think with the pressure on air quality in cities and the pressure to decarbonise our society, electrification is obvious. And I think you can also see from the technologies and the machines on display that in that class of equipment, that's the area where electrification can happen right now today. So yeah, inevitable.
Thank you, Chris. Gerhard, are you going to object and disagree with everyone else on the panel?
No, I think to disagree is not the right approach, but I would like to add that besides this emission requirements in urban areas, I think the electric solutions have a very good advantage of significantly lower operating costs and maintenance costs. And I think the main task for us is to identify the right starting point, like Peter, you said, compact equipment. First, utilized mainly in urban areas, and second, the power demand, the energy demand is significantly less. So here the starting point, I think, is good to bring in electric solutions, which then will be accepted by the market due to lower operating costs and lower maintenance costs in these areas where the batteries and the drive systems is acceptable to reach this application. So I think that the main task is to identify these spots and then to manage significantly industrialization of these components, that first batteries, charging systems, e-motors, inverters, and for us, of course, very important, the combination or symbiosis of e-motors and transmissions are available to acceptable, feasible or manageable product costs, so that the total cost of ownership at the end of the day is positive.
This is more of a question for ZF, as it's more related to your particular technology, so I'll start with the two ZF gentlemen, if that's okay. Start with you, Peter.
Yeah.
In which vehicles do you see that emission-free drives are going to be feasible and suitable?
So first of all, we have divided our product range in compacted heavy equipment, and due to the discussions we had already, and we see the first application in urban areas, and typically in urban areas we see the compact equipment. This will be, in my opinion, in applications like small wheel loaders, small telehandlers, mini excavators. We will see that we are already seeing their first steps, and we will see more machines coming up there. Nevertheless, also other applications like concrete mixer driving applications will require electrification, and we are already on the way to show up products for those applications. We can see here at the booth for concrete mixer drives, but also for compact equipment, and I think this will be the first step. And another important topic is the first step, especially on the driveline technology. We will see with 48 volt technology, because of the reduced requirements on efficiency, on safety. And then second, I also see that the heavy equipment will see electrified driveline solutions, but there we have, I think, more time, because we do not have there a legislative pressure or pressure from municipalities, and there we will have more time to work on solutions, but ZF will take paths for that. And we were working on solutions also for heavy-duty wheel loaders, mid-size 10 to 20 tons, and also for wheeled excavators.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Gerhard, you're head of e-mobility for industrial applications at ZF. You have a view on that?
Yeah, as Peter said, we are working on this heavy equipment, and we investigated the last 2 years intensively the technologies with the pros and cons, and we came to the conclusion that if you start to look on the total cost of ownership,
we do not see in general that hybridization is the right approach. So for the hybridization, be it a parallel hybrid, be it a serial hybrid, we see that the additional complexity or additional product costs compared to the benefits which are there but not so big, we do not expect that this will be a positive business case. So therefore we decided to continue to go with pure electric solution also to these technologies or to these applications, and then to prepare electromechanic drivetrain solutions for electric mid-size construction equipment with more time and preparation.
Thank you, Gerhard. Mike, do you have a view on this subject?
I think one of the things that needs to be said as an overview, we think it's going to move from consumer to small equipment to medium-sized equipment to large equipment. I think the large equipment, non-urban areas, the last one that deals with electrification. But I also think everybody's talking about electrification. It's everywhere. It's not like we're going to come to Bauma in 2022 or 2025 and everything's going to be electric. There are certain applications, there are certain markets, there are certain uses in a machine that no doubt will go electric. But to think that these halls will be populated by electric machines in 3 years, 6 years, 9 years, 12 years, I think people always see an emerging technology and assume it's going to be everywhere. It's going to take 30 years, 50 years, 20 years before it really becomes commonplace. And I think we need to remember that there's still going to be a lot of engines with a lot of electronics running around here in the next 9 years, at least.
Chris, do you have a view? Did you have any anticipation when we might see an all-electric Bauma in the future?
Well, as Mike said, hopefully we'll all be retired by then. But I'm going to disagree a little bit, actually, because
that's good. Thank you.
There are applications that you can do today that are all electric in the compact sphere. And if you take the whole spectrum of construction equipment, okay, a 2-ton mini excavator, fine. A 300-ton dump truck, I'd really like to see the battery pack that powers that one. So you've got what you can't do and what you can do. And in the middle, I think it will be interesting to see whether hybridization can fill a little gap. I do absolutely accept what you say about the costs and benefits, but I do wonder that if some of the drivers change, that if carbon is taxed more heavily and there's a greater swing towards renewable energies, that if the diesel price goes up and if society turns away more from fossil fuels, whether that will swing the economic argument a little bit and create a space for hybrids in the space between what you can do and what you can't do.
Peter, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. So this could be a potential scenario, but again, I mentioned already, so we need to take care about the different technologies. I think nobody can afford to have 3 parallel technologies running: diesel, hybrid, full electric. I think we need to make the right decisions on the right time. And I agree with also with Mike that we will not see electrification in all applications. So we will see electrification first in the niche where it, from the cost point of view, total cost of point of view, it makes sense, especially if you look to the heavier applications, let's say non-compact applications. Yeah, and this is also related to the environmental conditions. I agree with you again. And but I'm still the opinion that we will see the combustion engine for the next decades in the construction machinery, so it will not disappear. That's clear.
Thank you very much for that. Working on the basis that we all won't be living in a huge metropolis in 30 years' time, hopefully there will be some small villages and smaller non-urban construction sites. What, Mike, do you think will be the, for applications in non-urban construction sites, what technology will be favoured? Do you think full electric, hybrid?
One of the things we haven't mentioned, a lot of it depends on the governments. If the government says any urban area over 5 people, you have to have, and we haven't talked noise much, has to have lower noise, lower emissions, that's going to drive the developments. But personally, I think the non-urban areas, especially the agricultural areas, are the very last ones to convert to an all-electronic world. I think it starts in the cities and progressively moves out from there. So I think, frankly, the smaller the population center, the less likely. But you never know if a state government, a local government, a national government starts to legislate some of that and doesn't just focus on the cities and say everywhere in Bavaria you have to have this, then that will drive it. But I also notice a lot of those regulations are 2030, 2035, 2040, when all the politicians that made those laws are retired. So we'll see. But I think the non-urban area is the last one to see a lot of electrification.
Okay, Gerhard, do you want to take up that subject?
I agree to the point of view that the boundary conditions or the legislation requirements, they rule at the end of the day which technologies will be the answer. So I think it's very important to see which legislation is in preparation for passenger car, for trucks, what in discussion for agricultural engineering, and also what will come for construction equipment. And I would expect that the topic of decarbonization, even if many of the people who discussed today are then retired, that the pressure will increase. So if I look to the newspaper and to the society, I see more that the attention and the pressure of this topic is increasing, and maybe not so strong increasing in the governments of this world, but in the people's mind. So I would expect that this will be a growing topic to discuss CO2 reduction in general, urban areas or not, because the CO2 emission is globally. And of course, these decisions at the end of the day, based on this pressure, will then decide which technology is the right solution. So at the end of the day, as an industry, we can provide solutions, but the boundary conditions, they need to be set and to discussed first.
Thank you, Peter. Peter, do you have any thoughts on for applications in non-urban sites, full electric or hybrid, something else?
So I think we discussed already the topic regarding that. One driver will be costs. If we find a cost-viable solution, which is an electrified solution, then the people will buy this. If we cannot meet the cost expectations, then another driver could come up from legislative side. And yeah, as mentioned, we can offer different solutions, but we will not define by ourselves which solution will need it at which time. This is something which the boundary conditions will define for us.
Thank you, Peter. Chris, do you have a thought?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is not so much in the technology or the cost associated with it. It's the infrastructure that needs to be there to support it. Because even in an urban setting with an electric piece of equipment, you need to charge it somewhere, or you need the battery exchange available. So clearly that becomes even more challenging in a rural environment. And of course, part of the point about construction is construction happens in the countryside because nothing's there yet. So you kind of have to construct the infrastructure for your equipment, or you have a solution there before you can actually get the machines on site and build what you're there to build. So it's not an insurmountable problem, I don't think, but I think the infrastructure that underpins making these vehicles usable in whatever environment is as important as the technology being there and the cost being right.
I've got some good news for the four of you on the panel. This is my off-the-wall question to you all, and Mike looks particularly worried. The good news is you've just been promoted to run a diesel engine manufacturing company. What would your business strategy for the next 20 years be? First question to Mike.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that downsizing engines, if it's a 20-year window, I don't think there's much difference other than you look at some hybridization. You look at first you have to look at your market profile. If you're selling all ag and heavy construction equipment, electrification is not that important. If your main product group is mini excavators, wheel loaders, telehandlers, you better have an electrification strategy with that. But part and parcel with that, and the one thing we haven't talked about, is all this stuff has to be serviced at some point. And I don't think people have thought that through in an urban environment, maybe that works. But in the commercial vehicle business, in the States, we always say if you're pulling a load over the Rocky Mountains and the truck breaks down at the top and you have to take it 1,000 kilometers to get it serviced, that's not a business model anybody's going to deal with. So I think you'd have to look at individual market segments. Certainly, and we've been talking, frankly, from a U.S. Eurocentric point of view. When you look at the other emerging markets, that puts a whole different spin on which directions you're going, whether it's electrification or not. So at this point, it's like the first days of emissions. I don't think you can rule anything out, and you have to be ready for everything. So, and it depends what they're paying me to do that. So,
Thank you, Mike. Peter, what are you going to do with your new factory that you've just inherited?
Yeah, I think we need to differentiate the products very, very carefully. First of all, we need to look the market, which market we want to serve, which region of the world we want to serve, and we need to decide where we have to concentrate on. I think it will be really a big challenge for all this engine supplier, manufacturer to find the right strategy. Currently, they are working on everything. Yeah? Alternative fuels, synthetic fuels, gas, but they're looking also on hybridization, electrification. And I think we have to be prepared for, as an engine manufacturer, for every option.
Okay, thank you. The Chris Light diesel engine company that's just been formed, what's your way forward?
I think the first thing I would do is look at the R&D budget and then make it bigger, because I think as people have said already, it's early days and you don't really know what the future is going to be, and you're going to have to try a couple of things, work out what the best solution is, and it will be application specific, I think. But I think you also probably have to be resigned to the fact that you may go down a route that might be hopeless, that might not have a long-term future. So you're going to have to spend more, and maybe you're going to have to be prepared to walk away from something. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Final word goes to Gerhard.
I would try to make it simple. If I'm only responsible for 20 years, I would concentrate on the combustion engine and the markets and applications where we could sell it for 20 years. I agree to everybody that's realistic for 20 years, no problem. Depends on the market and applications. If I would have the task to make the company fit for the future, I would clarify fast if in parallel I would set up the fuel cell or the battery as the future generation of product of power supply.
Great, thank you very much. I'd like to thank all four of you for your inspiring and interesting comments. It's been very illuminating. We now have the chance to throw some questions into the audience. If anyone has got a question they would like to ask the team here, Alex has a roving mic. Please raise your hand and state who you are and where you are from, if you would, please, and then put your question forward.
Just that good,
No questions, perhaps. Alex, do you have a question?
Surprise.
Is there any food left or drinks we can hand out?
I'm Gabriele Dinsel from Diesel Progress International, and I would like to know what ZF offers for the electrification products.
Okay, let's take a focus on construction machinery. So we can see here at the booth two solutions for two different applications. One is compact equipment, as I mentioned already. We have developed our own e-motor, which we can use for compact equipments, as I mentioned already, for small wheel loaders, small telehandlers, and we are very proud of that. And we will be ready with this solution 2020 for serial production. Second, we can see here on the right side the electric drive for concrete mixer trucks, drums. we are running already vehicles prototype with this solution, and we will have the first pre-series production this year, series production in 2020. We are also, from our T-Division colleagues, we are also showing products for electric drive trains for trucks. We have here a full electric central drive for trucks, which, for example, can be also used for a mixer truck. And we have also an electro-hydraulic steering system for trucks.
Is there anything you'd like to add to that, Gerhard? Oh, you have a question in the audience. Thank you, Alex.
My name is Tom Kelp, and I am a contractor in the U.S., in Missouri. I read some, but I haven't been able to read enough of specifics on hydrogen fuel cells, and that seems like the direction to go. From what I understand, it is 100% emission-free, but what I don't know is it practical and financially feasible and viable?
Thank you for that. We'll start with Mike. You have a thought?
That's an excellent question. You're hearing here some of the manufacturers are talking about hydrogen and fuel cells. And I think to what Gerhard and Peter have both said, everything's on the table. There are some manufacturers that favor one fuel, some favor another, some favor fuel cells, some hybrid. So the answer is yes. And it's really, if I'm an end user, I'm right where you are. I don't have a clue what's coming at me because your OEMs don't have a clue what they're going to offer you. It's like Tier 3 emissions. Nobody knew what they were going to do until it happened, and the last person to hear about it were the contractors. So I think hydrogen is one of the many things on the table. Fuel cells are one of the many things on the tables, and there's a lot of other pieces on the table. I think, frankly, by 2022, when we're here again, we'll start to see some of that resolution, but I don't think it'll be sorted out for another decade. Yeah.
And just another comment, I mean, we talk electrification, and we are doing more and more renewable sources, and I totally agree with that. But if in 5 years we switched everything, vehicles and equipment, to electric, there would be no way that the infrastructure could handle that. So I think, as you said, it's both and. We cannot, that I see as a world, in a nation or a world, go strictly to electric for everything. I mean, it's a nice idea, and it's emission. Well, it's still not emission free because you're still, unless you're all renewable, which again we will go in that direction, but it won't happen overnight.
Not in 3 years. We heard a presentation at a power gen show a year ago that if the entire east coast of the United States went 50% of electrification in cars and trucks, there's not enough power capacity to handle that demand. So if they all plugged in at 7 o'clock at night, you blow the grid and everybody's in a blackout. So there's a lot of other things that have to happen. Where do we get to enough hydrogen to run that many machines? It's fine to pick a technology, but then there's 10 things after or before that have to happen. So.
Thank you, Mike. We'll come down the panel in order. Chris, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, it is a very interesting point. I mean, I think the thing about hydrogen as well as electricity is that your point is very well made, is that it takes energy to produce hydrogen. So from a global societal point of view, it's only really interesting to do it if you can do it with renewable energy. Because if you're burning a load of coal for hydrogen, okay, maybe your city's a bit cleaner. So yeah, it's probably the issue of our lifetime, frankly, to make that shift to decarbonise.
Thank you, Chris. Peter?
So I think these are very interesting discussions, and all these different comments again shows us that it's very a difficult topic, electrification, and we will have many challenges which we need to for which we need to find solutions. And I also agree with you, we will not have this change within 2 or 3 years. Fully agree. And we will have different solutions in different areas of the world.
Thank you, Gerhard.
Maybe to answer your question directly, the hydrogen fuel cell is a good option for the future. It does technically perform. From my point of view, the topic is the product costs and the material, like platinum, which is used as a catalyst. So from my point of view, there is huge effort at the moment from many companies to make the fuel cell more attractive from product cost point of view and chemistry point of view, and I think this is the task to do. Here I would expect that they will need time, all of them, and maybe 2030 is an area where we will see then in a real industry position the fuel cell fit for that. About this migration, I call it migration from the actual energy situation globally to a totally new one. Of course, it needs time. Personally, I like to look at this question to the past. For example, when Mr. Daimler made his first car, which was not called car at this time, there was the same situation that everybody said to him, what's the benefit? I have no infrastructure. So I think this infrastructure discussion we had several times in our industry, and you can read books how long it takes from the first great idea until then the infrastructure grows and grows, and decades or generations later everybody's laughing about this point of view at this time. So I would expect that this migration from now to then takes at least 1 to 2 decades, in reality probably 2 decades. But I think it's important to prepare for this migration scenario and realize in which spots we can start now, like hear ideas for that, and then in which steps we can continue, and in which procedure speed the infrastructure in parallel can be built up. But every time I hear these arguments, which are all of them true, I think about the feedback of Mr. Daimler 1895, what to invest into a car, there is no infrastructure. I think it's the same discussion.
Thank you very much. Thank you for a very good question as well. Still have a little bit more time if anyone else has a question. Alex, thank you.
Hello, this is Mansur Çaynak from Modular Makina. Actually, I'm developing a hybrid vehicle. The hybridization is a feature. However, what do you think about the micro turbine? Because in micro turbine there is no space issue, and also there is no gas emission if you compare the diesel engines. So, what do you think about that? You know, maybe we will see more micro gas turbine genset manufacturer in 5 years' time.
Thank you. Well, we'll go the other way. Gerhard, do you like to comment first?
I'm not the expert on this turbine technology, so I need to be carefully. I would expect that we will see a bunch of different technologies which will then come up in certain applications or niches without taking it down too much. And also this genset technology, I would expect that this is one of these flowers of this bunch of technologies which will reach a certain position. I would expect yes.
Okay, Peter, do you like to comment further?
Yeah, I just want to add that again, it will be very difficult to state today which will be the right technology, and we will see different solutions. One solution is maybe best for application in urban areas, another solution is maybe better for application in non-urban areas. It depends also on the kind of application, you know. And currently everybody, so the door is open for everything. And we will, I think in the next 10 to 20 years, we will see a consolidation of the different technologies, and we need this 20 years to find the right alternative technology to combustion engines.
Okay, thank you. Chris, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that specific technology, but I think you could take the view that the drivers that you see in the world today will apply to any technology that you would need to try. So where does the cost come in, and the total cost of the vehicle over its lifetime, the maintenance requirements and things like that, the fitness for purpose. Ideally, it will ultimately be the same cost or cheaper than what is on the market today, and it will be as good, if not better, than is what's on the market today. And that drives everything that you see around. And yeah, none of us have a crystal ball, and if we knew today what the right technology path would be, we'd go down that. But I think we have to recognise that, as other speakers have said and I have said, we will probably go down routes which will be hopeless, that may look promising at the start but just don't work out because of cost, because of reliability, because of fitness for purpose, if there's another emissions implication. So yeah, as a society and as an industry, we have to try everything, and we find out by trial and error what works.
Thank you, Chris. Mike, would you like to say anything?
Shockingly, I have absolutely nothing to add other than the drivers, whatever the technology is, the drivers are the same. You know, low cost, low noise, total cost of ownership, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Whatever technology meets those drivers will be the technology that gets used. And if any of us knew that answer, we'd be out doing that right now, not standing here pretending we know what's going to happen in the next 20 years. So I agree. Everything's on the table, and the drivers, that's the one thing that is known, are the drivers. Now, what responds to those drivers in the best way?
Okay, thank you. A little bit of time left. Was there any more questions? No? Well, in that case, I'd like to thank the panel. I'd like to thank ZF for participating with us in this venture. I'd like to thank everyone who has turned up and has listened. Thank you very much for coming.